we see what we look for. We embrace what we know to be true. We live out of the truths that we actually have inside of us. Do we believe that Jesus Christ is the most powerful force on earth, and that it's through his power that he will bring the transformation of all the earth?
Yes.
That's the truth. We're dealing with truth. We're talking about truth because we have to be rooted in truth. The one foundation, everything is built on truth. Jesus Christ and him crucified. Everything else, it's noise. Everything else can be washed away, can be shaken, can be lost. Jesus Christ and him crucified is the truth. That the love of God is what has been pouring out from the time, since the beginning. It is his love that he desires, not judgment. He's always had a heart for mercy over judgment. We have to grasp the truth. The truth it's a shortage right now because people are trying to what? Define their own truth. So we've been talking about truth for a while. And I have outside, and what is truth? And can we handle it? You know, that's something that we all have to come to terms with. Do we understand what is true to us? Can we handle the truth? See, people right now, this generation is struggling with truth. But every generation struggles with truth. Don't single them out. Don't think that, it's this millennial or Gen Xers or whoever they happen to be just because we label them. We all have to struggle. We all have to deal with our own truth. The greatest generation of the 40s, they had to struggle with truth. The Great Depressions, they had to deal with truth. Every generation deals with truth. The disciples had to deal with truth. Would they embrace it or would they walk away? So as the series that we're in, it's living in the light of God's truth. And we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, and I really don't want to waste time on going back over it again a lot. If you go to, we've been talking about personal, understanding truth from a high level of what is it personally, what is it within the church. Today we're going to launch into the city and nation. But if you want to look at the last couple of messages, they're on Facebook, they're on YouTube as well. Go there because I don't want to spend a lot of time this morning trying to recap. But it starts with, what is truth and can we handle it? That's a question that we still have to ask. And it stems from this passage in John 18 where Jesus is before Pilate. And he says, therefore, Pilate said to him, so you are a king. Jesus answered, you say correctly that I am a king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world to testify to the truth. Right there is the purpose of Jesus Christ. He came to testify to who the Father was, the truth of who the Father is. But what does Pilate say? Let's continue on. Everyone who is the truth hears my voice. But what does Pilate say? What is truth? What is truth? He's got truth in front of him. What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again and he said to the Jews, he said to them, I find no guilt in him. So here he is. Pilate's in front of truth. And he can't see it. He can't recognize it. Jesus doesn't try to defend himself. He doesn't try to tell him, because if he can't see it, he's certainly not going to understand it if he were to speak to him. But isn't that where we are today? We're confronted with truth. Do we recognize it? Do we embrace it? Or do we turn away from it? Again, we're talking about the evolution of man's truth. Again, I've talked about this, that it starts with an understanding of who God is, but then we've evolved into this pre-modernism and modernism and postmodern to the point where this relativism basically says if it's good for you, it's good for you. If it's good for me, it's good for me. Everything is situational. I'll talk about that a little bit more today, because that's how it plays out in society as well. But Jesus promised us this. Why do we have to understand that man's truth keeps evolving? God's truth never changes. And Jesus even said, hey, I'm going to send this because when I send you the truth, I'm going to send you the Spirit of truth. But when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all the truth, for he will not speak on his own initiative. But whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will disclose to you what is to come. There's more revelation to come. Not all the truth, not our understanding of truth is changing. The truth doesn't change, but our understanding of truth and how we can relate to it continues to change. That's revelation. It's not set in stone. From a personal standpoint, we have to understand, what do we believe to be true? Because the key between understanding what is true is going to dictate what I do. What I believe to be true, my belief structure, will drive our purpose, will create what I do as how to live my life. So we have to understand what is truth for us personally. How about within religion and the church and the ecclesia? We talked about how the church is trying to define truth, to codify it, so that we think that we own the truth at the exclusion of somebody else. Religion is what? It's changing a worldview. Religion wants to impress upon us a worldview according to the tenets of that faith. Whatever the faith is. Works the same thing for a political system, right? Communism wants to impress upon you a worldview that the state is God. Churches do that. Religion does that. But an ecclesia is what? An ecclesia is different. That's what we're called to be. Jesus did not come and establish a religion. He established an ecclesia, and that's you and I. We're part of the legislative aspects of bringing His will, His kingdom into the earth. An ecclesia is the truth that an ecclesia is relational, and it's not about rules. It's about our relationship with God. It's continuous. We continue to change. Our understanding, the revelation of who He is, continues to shift and to change. Just like my relationship with my wife has changed over the years, we understand more and more of one another. God's revelation, everything about Him has not been just revealed in this Bible or in Jesus Christ. He continues. Why do you think He said, "I'm the city of the Spirit who will continue to show you more and more"? But religion wants to tell you, we got all the facts. We put God in the box and we can sell it to you, market to you, 10 steps to get to God. But we understand from an ecclesia, truth is holy. We are to be holy. We have a pattern of Jesus Christ. We are to be in unity. God, Jesus' prayer to God was, let them be one. As you and I are one, let them be one. And truth takes effort. We don't like effort. How many times do we read something, 10 easy steps? Don't we like that little adjective right there? Easy. If it was easy, anybody would do it. If freedom was easy, everybody would be free. Think about that. Paul tells the Colossians to be careful, to understand. Don't go back under this religion. And he says, for you were included in the death of Christ and have died with Him to the religious system. We died with Him to the religious system and the powers of the world. Don't retreat back to being bullied by the standards and opinions of religion. Religion can be a bully. But I want to talk about what is truth within a society, within a city and state and nation. Society and government, they're pretty similar. We can kind of use them all the same. Society, governments reflect people. They do. Society has norms, right? We have structures. And cities, actually, you can look at if this pandemic didn't show you that how you can have states and cities and areas have total different understanding of what is true. If you lived in California, the truth was, shut everything down. This pandemic's going to kill everybody if we don't stop. Florida, where we live, okay, we take some steps, open everything. Two different aspects. And do you know that we had a less mortality rate than California? Per capita. So it's not like, because they have more people. So understanding that cities and states and nations take on, I call it a personality of the people. There is a transcendence of the people, and so we have to ask, what is true in our city, our state, and our nation? I love to use statesmen from times past. I love Winston Churchill. He's one of my favorites, actually. And he says that men occasionally stumble over the truth, but most of them pick themselves up and hurry off as if nothing ever happened. We see truth. Society sees what's true. Do we embrace it, or do we stumble over it? That's not true. Let's continue on our way. Because they don't, that light, Truth is light. That's why the Spirit of God is truth. Wherever that truth shines, darkness has to flee. Truth cannot live in darkness. Darkness loves the lie. That's where they breed. That's where the cockroaches live, is in the dark. And that's where the lies live. So what is truth? What is truth within a society? Throw that out to you guys. You're a bright-looking bunch. What is truth in society, in government, or from a higher level? What is it? Come on, don't be shy. What society determines it to be? So who defines truth? As scary as this might sound, you and I, as the society in which we live. What's hard, though, is how is truth defined? So again, it comes to us as a society. How do we define what's true? Who or what we ascribe as the highest authority defines truth in a city, state, nation. Whoever we ascribe as the highest authority, that's who defines truth. Do we define truth based on God's rules? Do we define truth based on the government's rules? The party? See, I use party because I'm not talking about just the communists. I'm talking about Republican and Democrat. Does the party define truth? Or me? Man. Do I get to define truth? And the more of our society as we continue to evolve, it is about man, the humanist. Man is God. And if I'm God, I get to define truth. Because remember, that truth, whatever it is, it dictates our beliefs, which dictates our purpose, our strategies, tactics, and outcomes. How we live our lives. Truth is the root. See, a lot of times we don't want to examine truth. We don't want to really look deep and think deeply about what do I hold truth in my life to be? What does it look like? And I love one more quote. The further a society drifts from truth, the more it will hate those that speak it. George Orwell, 1984. Talk about a visionary. Go back and read 1984, just for fun. Go back and read it. Might consider him prophetic. But the more that we drift, the more that we hate truth. The more that truth, an absolute truth, and we're going to talk about that a little bit here, the more that we understand what is absolute truth, the more we start to say, there can't be absolutes. We don't like absolutes. So I want to talk about the importance of understanding the truth about America and how we develop this truth from a societal aspect, from a governmental aspect, because it engages us, it accompanies us to understand we have to, remember where we came from to know where we're going. We've got to look at history. We have to learn from it and understand what it is. And why not highlight the significance of 1492 for you history buffs? This isn't a history lesson, but there might be some history in this. 1492. Come on, we all learned sailed the ocean blue, right? But why is 1492 significant? What else happened in 1492? May 1. May 1st. The Jews were expelled from Spain. 1492. The Jews were expelled from Spain. Within 3 months later, Columbus is leaving for a new country. I think there's a significance to this, that the Jews here have to, it's under religious oppression. Convert or die. Leave. Same within 3 months, 90 days, Columbus leaves from where? Spain. To a new world. I believe that America has this understanding. This is the purpose of America. 1492, Columbus sails the ocean blue. Is America a Christian nation? That's always a question, right? One of our recent presidents declared it not to be a Christian nation. I think he was wrong. You can't change what history has dictated. I highlight this, that God chose Israel, but America chose God. When Genesis 11, and God separates the nations, and he calls out Abraham to be his nation, right? To start Israel, the nation of Israel. God separates the nation out. God chose them, Israel, Abram, his seed, to bring Messiah and to carry the law for the New Testament until the new covenant comes in. When America is founded, we have a covenant. We chose God because the purpose of the nation is outlined. And I'm going to read this to you. If you have not heard of Robert Hunt in the Jamestown landing at Cape Henry, 1607. I was recently there with my wife. We were on a prayer tour. They planted a cross when they landed. And this is the proclamation that they made. And I want you to understand it, that this is a covenant that was made. That man made with God. God honors covenant. It says, we do hereby dedicate this land and ourselves to reach the people within these shores with the gospel of Jesus Christ and to raise up godly generations after us. And these generations take the kingdom of God to all the earth. It goes on. May this covenant of dedication remain to all generations as long as this earth remains, and may this land, along with England, be evangelists to the world. May all who see this cross, they planted a cross there. Right now there's actually a concrete cross there commemorating their landing. Remember what we have done here, and may those who come here to inhabit join us in this covenant and in this most noble work, that the Holy Scriptures may be fulfilled. There's a monument to this. There's a power in monument. Why did God say, when they crossed the Jordan, take some rocks and stack them up to remember those things? They planted a cross. They made a covenant before God to all generations. This is the founding of America. This is who we are, with a purpose. Jesus came he had a purpose of testifying to the truth. We have a purpose to bring this gospel around the globe. The first governing document in the New World for us is the Mayflower Compact, 1620. I think I heard. And the first paragraph reads this. I'm not going to read the whole thing, obviously. In the name of God, amen. First statement. In the name of God, so be it. We, whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign Lord, King James, by the grace of God, and by Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defend the faith, having undertaken for the glory of God an advancement of the Christian faith. I've seen Plymouth Rock. I've been to Plymouth. It's an actual rock, and they just put it in 1620 on it. But they founded their government. This is the first governing document for the purpose of what? The Christian faith. So is America a nation, a Christian nation? Yes. The power of covenant. God still honors covenant. God never breaks a covenant. That covenant, understand what that covenant has done for us. It has brought protection. It has brought blessing. It has brought benefits. But guess what? It also has a responsibility. It has commitment that we have to make. And there is a two parts to this covenant. There's commitment. You know, can we shift and lose the foundation of that Christian belief? Absolutely. I use Dan and Ephraim as an example. In Hosea, it says, leave Ephraim alone. They've given themselves over to idols. Even in Revelation, it mentions them the first time. The second time they've gone because they have turned into a pagan nation. So truth can erode a nation. A people can turn from God. Dan and Ephraim did. But that covenant still stands. God never broke the covenant. He said they have to come in the Gentile gate. But we have to be, can a nation, can we be led astray? Yes. We have to understand what is truth. So is America a post-truth? I love this. Is it now a post-truth? Didn't realize that we had already gone past truth, now we're post-truth. People don't even know what post-truth means. But post-truth, this is an eye test, just so you know. Post-truth, relating to a situation in which people are more likely to accept an argument based on their emotions and beliefs rather than one based on facts. Emotion, belief, feeling is starting to trump fact, right? That's a post-truth. And what's interesting is you see this used, you can't see it, it says, he dubs the current administration a post-truth White House. That's just, Britannica. I'm not, no, this is Columbia. Or, who is this? Cambridge Dictionary. I'm not making it up. That's how they use this post-truth. It's no longer based in facts and truth. It's based on feeling, emotion. I've got some statistics. I always like statistics. I'm going to throw some statistics at you today. Barnum does a lot of studies and polls, right? It says that, and these are actually from 4 or 5 years ago. It says that a majority of Americans, 57%, say that knowing what is right and wrong is a matter of personal experience. It's based on personal experience, post-truth, right? 3/4, 74% of millennials agree with the statement, whatever is right for your life and works best for you is the only truth you can know. A majority of Americans see morality as a matter of cultural consensus. Whatever we decide as a country, as a culture, society, is moral. Every culture, get this, every culture must determine what is acceptable morality for its people. We got to understand there's an erosion here. But it says that in the Bible provides us with absolute moral truths which are the same for all people in all situations without exceptions. Still 60% believe that. So the Bible still has relativity. It's still the principle by which we base truth. But look at this field. There's only 35% of Americans believe there's absolute truth. Relative, based on situation, based on my understanding, 44%. And this was 4 or 5 years ago. It has increased. I have to tell you that. It's increased. Why are we still dealing with truths? Now, I have to quote the president of Barnum Group, David Kinnaman. He says, the highest good according to our society is finding yourself and then living by what's right for you. Finding yourself, and then you live by your own definition. Doesn't that sound like a little g God? Isn't that the whole purpose of the garden? Wasn't that the understanding of good and evil? I can find myself, and I can define myself. I get to be God. But what happens when this truth is compromised? We start to see that good leadership, I love this from Proverbs 20:28, it says, good leadership is built on love and truth, for kindness and integrity are what keeps leaders in their position of trust. If leaders are being shifted right and left based on this consensus of a society, we're not going to be able to trust them because they will shift and move. I still remember, like in 2016, we were going through this campaign, and one of the candidates was saying, well, I don't know where I stand on that position. I need to take a poll first. I got to know what the people think before I can tell you what I think. Isaiah 59:14 says, justice is driven away and righteousness stands on the sidelines, for truth has stumbled in the public square and morality cannot enter. Not my word, these are. But this is why we have to understand what is truth. Where does it come from? How do we understand it? See, society and governments, we reflect the people. The people are reflected in the government. We give our authority to the government and they take control and either will do what we desire or they will bring their own desires for us, upon us. But we consent. Even people in communist nations, by default, they are giving their consent. Until a point of what? Revolution and revolt. So we have to understand it. We knowingly give our consent. Who are we? How are we holding our values to bring them into society, or are we shrinking back? Because it's not the government's fault. It's our fault. How about this? It is not the function of the government to stop the citizens from falling into error. It is the function of the citizen to keep the government from falling into error. Justice Robert Jackson in the Nuremberg trials. Again, people were blaming the German government. The people allowed it. We don't like to hear that, right? That responsibility word, the truth, they allowed it. It happened. We blame it on the Nazis. Like there's somebody else. That's them. So if we want truth in our society, it's up to us. Can truth, history, be rewritten? We only have to look at history to see how easily this is done. When the communists come to power, first thing they did, eradicate church. Religion has to go. Because the party, the government, becomes the religion. And they rewrite history. They sanitize it. They burn books. They remove names that we don't like. Promote a different history. Fascism comes to place. And what happens? We are burning books by the millions. There's bonfires in the streets of Berlin. We're rewriting history to where this white supremacy comes from the Norse gods all the way through. The Jews are the rats. They're the bane of our existence. We have to eradicate them to purify our race. If you haven't seen pictures of that, there are millions standing there with their hands up, attesting to it. History can be changed if we allow it. It's a cleansing. You know, the communist regimes and people say, socialism, communism is the greatest things. Do you not realize that they have what they call the Great Purge? We think that we went through a struggle with the Civil War, but how about the Great Purge? 20 million dead from Stalin. How about another 60 million in Asia through the Khmer Rouge and the communists in there? 100 million souls dead in a communist transition. And we're looking at a society, we have teachers in our schools saying, we love socialism. This is what we're after, Marxism and socialism, and the end point of socialism is communism. That's where the train ends. We have critical race theory. Yeah, I'm going there. Critical race theory. You know what it actually is? It's called neo-Marxist. Because it's about taking from others and taking from the rich, giving to the poor. It's the same Marxist teachings that Vladimir Lenin grabbed. And do you know what? He renounced them by the time he did. He was dying in 1924, but before he died, he renounced them that they didn't work. But Stalin took that forward. But this critical race theory is saying that it debunks that our nation was founded upon equality, but equity, built on race. Do you want to take down a nation, create a race war? Do you want to have a fight over a power struggle? Marxism is what? Capitalism must die. The capitalists or the owners, the workers revolt, they take what they have. How many times have we said we're going to tax the rich and give to the poor? Who gets to determine who's rich? Who gets to determine who's poor? The ruling class. We have to understand, critical race theory is about equity. It is about saying that we are systematically a racist nation of white supremacy is built into every aspect, and we have to renounce this, and that we have everything is based on equity lines. Again, they want to take and give. This is the same thing that Marxists have always wanted. Instead of calling it neo-Marxism, they call it critical race theory, and we're buying into it. We're removing anything that in the House, in the Congress, there's a statue of a judge that made a ruling that we're going to get rid of him because he made a ruling that blacks were property, and so we can't have that. So we sanitize it, make it as if it doesn't happen. We're removing all this. We're trying to cleanse and sanitize to bring equity, not equality. Doesn't equity sound good? But it's based on race. It's based on this misogyny that women are being oppressed by men all their lives. Everything is about division. It creates stratus. Instead of bringing us together, this continues to define and break us. And what do you think that does? It creates upheaval. That too. And it brings turmoil and chaos to what? Shift the government. Shift the society into Marxism. Read it. Study it. Look at what it actually means. I gotta hurry. I'm running out of time here. I'm running out of time. But I want to read this to you. The Declaration of Independence. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But I want to just, when we talk about truth, how can we not look at the documents that we have? In Congress, July 4, 1776. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume along the power of the earth the separate and equal station to which the law of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the separation. We hold these truth, to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, it's a capital C, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. The consent of the governed, that's us. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying the foundations on such principles and organizing its power in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. That's the declaration that they made. They put their lives on the line when they signed that. They were committing treason. Everything that they owned was on the line. Their lives, their families, their fortunes, everything was on the line for them to establish freedom. Those freedoms come from the government. Our founding fathers did not like government. We haven't figured that out. They were against government. They wanted the least amount of governing. They just came out of a kingdom and saying, we don't want, the worst thing that can happen to us is have more government. Greater government upon us creates greater restrictions. But think about this. 245 years ago today, they signed this thing. They declare their freedom. Are they free? No. They're not. They still had a war to fight. 7 years. 1783. 7 years. September of 1783, they actually become free. I had to straighten this. Just struck me that it's like what they say in Isaiah about Israel. It says that who has ever seen anything strange like this? Can a nation be created in a day? I love this because that's what they did. They declared a nation free. Who has ever seen anything like as strange as this? Who have ever heard of such a thing as has a nation ever been born in a single day? Yes, it has. Has a country ever become forth in a mere moment? But by the time Jerusalem's birth pains begin, her children will be born. America was born in a day. It took 7 years to fight for it. Why do we need monuments? Why do we need documents and monuments? I just read from a document that was penned over 250 years ago, almost 250 years ago. We have that on file. They can't change that. We have a Declaration of Independence. We have a Constitution. We hold on to these. Why? Because monuments and documents are what we have to base our truth on. Again, think about this. When God created Israel, what did he do? He made a covenant with Abraham. Right? He made a covenant with Abraham, gave Moses laws, written laws. What did he tell them? Remember the Passover, remember the seasons, remember these things I've done for you. When God in America, we have this, we have a covenant at Cape Henry. We have a Declaration of Independence, a written law by the Constitution. And what do? We commemorate these things. We have monuments. We can't allow history to be sanitized for the sake of hurting my feelings if I don't like what they did. Why do you think he had them stack up stones when they crossed the Jordan? Why do you think he said, remember this? Why do you think they had an ark that went before them? All of these things God provided to keep them pursuing the truth. We can't lose sight of this. I got some quotes here that I'm going to close with. Those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. If people can convince us that those things didn't happen, or that they should happen a different way, guess what? We can make things happen in a different way going forward. The duty of a patriot is to protect his country from its government. Thomas Paine, one of the biggest advocates for the revolution, right? The Paine letters. I got one more. A nation of sheep will beget a government of wolves. Edward R. Murrow. Talking about somebody that understood that. Went through the Red Scare. He was reporting at the time of McCarthyism and everything. We have a nation of sheep will beget governments of wolves. And how about Tacitus, a Roman historian? The more corrupt the state, the more numerous the laws. Why do we keep acting more laws and more laws and more laws? We need to, instead of less laws, we keep going with more and more because it's a control aspect. Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. This is Psalm 33:12. The people whom he has chosen as his heritage. We are a people chosen by God. He's ordained this. We decree this nation to be something it's not. We decree this nation to be the light that is to this world. We have to decree this. We have to believe that this is the purpose of this nation. What is true? We're here for a purpose. This nation survives for a purpose, not to be the greatest superpower with being able to nuke half the world. not to have the economic presence to be able to bully those around us. No, the purpose is to be strong, to propagate the gospel, to bring freedom. That's the purpose. Today, let's proclaim this. This is what the ending of that Declaration of Independence. It says that let's commit the effort of fulfilling God's providential plans for America. This is what the 56 signers of the Declaration of Independence proclaimed on July 4th. We affirm reliance on the protection of divine providence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That's who they are. They committed everything. Brian, you want to come up? We're going to have communion. We're going to do communion. David, would you mind passing out communion? They committed everything that they had. Not to the government, to each other, to the divine providence, to bring God's purpose to the earth. Thank you. We're here to bring about we're in the midst, and I just feel this, that there is an awakening. The third great awakening is upon us. This nation is being revived. There has been this shaking and shifting, and God is transforming the people, that no longer will the church be this thing on Sunday. He's bringing a whole reformation of revival through the church to reform into actually what we were intended to be. A legislative body that brings His kingdom to this earth. Because we're as an ecclesia, a called out people with power and authority from Jesus Christ to decree His kingdom into this world, to bring His will here. That's who we are. We have to be truth bearers. If we don't carry the light, how great is the darkness? We need to be the light on the hill. We cannot be that 77% that say, I can't tell you about my faith because I'm afraid I'm going to get dinged at work. My family is going to disown me. We have to speak truth. But we have to be truth. Our key is to be truth. That's the call, is to be the truth. And everything that we have or ever will have is based on the cross. The finished work of Jesus Christ. We stand today, when you talk about memorials and remembering, what did He say about communion, about the meal, of having this bread and this wine? He said, do it in remembrance of me. Why? It brings